evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's live stream. As you see, we're joined by our guest, Phil. I'm going to try and point at him. Let's see if I got the right way. Yeah, we're joined by Phil, our deputy leader. Great to have you with us, Phil. Phil's going.
I think you're normally on the left, aren't you? I'm on the left today.
yeah. Maybe you went on first or something. I don't know. Anyway, here we are. So let me get the comments on screen. Do fire in the comments. Hope to be seeing all of you on Saturday at our conference. Do get your tickets for the conference. I haven't got it on the screen at the moment. Yeah, so you can find that on our social media. Do get your tickets. It'd be great to see you there. Right, all sorts of things going on. Let's start with a little video first. Evening, Kirsty. Right, have a look at this. This was filmed in Edinburgh, just behind, Central Church, just off Lothian Road. Here we go. So I filmed this because this is, actually it wasn't filmed there, it's filmed somewhere else, but that's just as bad. It's a bit typical of what Edinburgh is like. Now, the graffiti is absolutely appalling. And I think that there's some slight code among the graffiti, I'm not going to call them artists, graffiti vandals. There does seem to be some slight code in there. They'll do it on the back of the building rather than the front. But still, walking around Edinburgh, I mean, the other day I was going up and down some of the steps near to the castle as well. Quite characterful thing, tourists going up and down there, just absolutely ruined with graffiti. So, Phil, what are you going to do about it? What's the solution?
I've heard of people going onto the London trains and cleaning up the graffiti on it. They got so fed up of it that they started going onto the trains, and then I think London Transport accused them of can't remember what it was, not quite terrorism, but something something probably not far off that.
Yeah. I mean, it is totally out of control. Surely if they catch someone doing it, surely they can be made to clean the stuff off for like hours and hours, dozens and dozens of hours. Basically, so you just sort of reach some sort of equilibrium. I don't know. I remember years ago watching on the BBC, and there was a bloke in an area like that, covered in graffiti, and he was quite reasonably saying, "Oh, this is terrible. Look at the state of this, total mess." And I was thinking, well, this is not like the BBC. This is actually quite sensible. But then it turned out it was a joke. That this was some sort of comedy show. And this was just trying to show someone, he's a person being grumpy for no good reason. Because it does seem to hover on the edge of being regarded as sort of artistic and trendy or whatever. But I don't think it is. It's absolutely awful. The centre of Edinburgh is getting ruined by it. And they just need to get a grip. They've got to start catching people doing it and coming down like an absolute ton of bricks on them. Because it is pretty appalling. Right, evening to a few people here. They do it now. They do it at night. Yeah, surely with technology these days, there must be a lot that can be done with that regard. I mean, how about setting up a stall and selling aerosols with some sort of tracker in them or something? I don't know. Surely there could be some sort of technology that can help, but it really needs sorting out. I guess the fear might be if you make a big fuss about it, it becomes a bit of a game, and they do even more.
I mean, like the technology is obvious. It's like, if you put cameras everywhere, but then there's civil liberties issues with that, and also putting trackers in aerosols would be a civil liberties issue.
Well, I'd be quite flexible on that. Straighten Pond Tunnel. All right, I haven't seen that. Well, there's a tunnel near Stockton Park as well where they've painted inside.
Yeah, Innocent Railway is full of graffiti. Yeah.
So sometimes there are places where, okay, fair enough, but it really needs demarking clearly because it's totally out of control. Anyway, I feel better for that, for sharing my thoughts. So family party policies. What can you put in it? I do fear if you try and crack down, it will make it more of a game. But surely there's got to be something. Surely, if you put up some huge, freshly painted white surface somewhere in Edinburgh and get a camera on it and police ready to jump out from behind the bushes, and surely there's things that could be done.
Do you think the BBC is encouraging it with their Banksy fanboyism? Every time
Yes.
Banksy does something, there's like,
Yeah.
it seems that I'm pretty sure they know who he is, and that they just promote his work. Lots of non-news stories, news stories.
Yeah, I think with graffiti, it is seen as a bit of a sort of left-wing progressive thing, that you're cool with graffiti because, hey, that's what it's like living in these tough urban areas. So we don't mind that. Really, it's very artistic. It's very multicultural. Whereas right wing's more, this is just a total mess and get rid. So I think there is a slight political slant to it. I think, which is why the BBC thought it was inherently funny to have a bloke. I mean, it was supposed to be comedy, but the bloke wasn't over the top, in my opinion. He was just complaining about it. But the BBC thought that's funny. That's someone being so unreasonable. It was funny.
Perhaps you could have a stand-up act on the BBC by just actually talking out family party policies.
I mean, this could be it. They could just put the live stream on.
They'd think it was satire, but you could actually get away with it.
Remaining on the same topic.
Oh, my favourites.
I mean, the BBC and Donald Trump's thing and some of the Hamas things. I think the Donald Trump one, that's a massive, massive deal because it's the tip of the iceberg. But it is so extreme. If I was making a YouTube video and I thought, right, I've got some things John Swinney said, I'm going to put that one there, then I'm going to get this one and make it sound like that was the whole sentence. I wouldn't dream of that. I would never do anything like that. But the BBC, there they go. Off they do it. Well, our policy is just to defund them, make them stand on their own 2 feet. Then if you want to churn this stuff out to people who want to pay for it, that's fine. But I wouldn't be paying for it. And we just get other things to watch instead. So,
well, anything you watch live requires a TV license, not just the BBC. So if you're watching anything, maybe even like the live stream on the...
It's not even live. It's not live. You can't even watch the player on other channels, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, really crazy. So I have a TV license for the sole reason that I want to pay Sky to watch the Grand Prix.
Yeah.
So I pay for a TV license and don't watch anything from the BBC. Nothing at all. Our television, we basically never watch television at all in the house.
Fairly similar.
Yeah. So it's really got to go. Right. Evening, everyone. BBC, something a bit more than a nudge as well, but pretty hefty shove unit as well sometimes. But it is it's a major problem. And can it be reformed? I don't think it can be reformed. It just needs to change its funding model, and then it can just compete with other sources, and we are away. Just another quick story just while we're warming up here. Abortion decriminalisation. The wheels are turning. The machinery is in operation in Scotland. The government-funded campaigning groups are putting out statements and launching campaigns. The Herald, the media in general in Scotland, the Herald in particular, they're just activists. They're just pro-abortion activists. So they're pushing this campaign. There was a demonstration at the Parliament. Unfortunately, we didn't know about it, or we'd have got there with some of our placards. So it was very unfortunate we missed that, because we could have livened that up a little bit. But it's quite, maybe frightening is too strong a word, but it's just quite striking to watch the machine swing into action, where you've got government-funded charities, you've got the government,
yes,
you've got the Parliament, and you've got the media, like acting as one. They've decided it's time to push this cause, and it's been pushed. So, will we end up with a vote in the Parliament before the Scottish election? I don't know, probably not. But after the Scottish election, this will be one of the first things they turn to. It will be ignored in the election campaign, then they'll be straight on it as soon as SNP, Labour, or whatever combination are in charge. So it's coming. So it's interesting. We've got X comments coming up. I didn't think X comments works on this, but obviously, okay, that's good. Anything on that, Phil, or should we just move on from there?
What, the abortion decriminalisation?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, you see it being built up, don't you? In the media, from government, from all those things, and just like preparing the way. There was something else I saw on the BBC. I'm trying to think what it was. It was a different topic, but it was just okay. Yeah, this is the guy running for mayor in New York.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
The BBC just wrote this massive gushing piece, which seemed to be obligatory for them to write about the sort of Muslim far left candidate. I guess New York's answer to Sadiq Khan.
Yeah, or Hamza Youssef even. Good luck to them. Yeah. Okay, it's this is. I was actually looking at a statement from an organisation today talking about this gender pay gap. Because I said this has sort of gone off the boil a little bit. If we went back to say 2017, 2018, this was big story, big news, and people were pushing it very hard in the Parliament, but it's sort of backed off a little bit, but it's still going on in Scotland. So this organisation was saying, here's our gender pay gap that was quite substantial, and they were saying, we're definitely going to solve it. We're going to solve it. In other words, we're going to discriminate against men. We're going to promote women because we're women. We're going to try and keep men out of the top jobs, and that's the way we're going to close our gender pay gap. I mean, how else can you do it? So men, this agenda is still going on. I think you have to be over 250 employees to have to declare your gender pay gap. But if you're in a company like that, basically as a man, you will be discriminated against in order to close the gender pay gap. It's just a fact. And it's totally unfair. I think young men in particular are just getting fed up of feeling that they're on the receiving end. The playing field isn't level, and quite rightly. But the Scottish government and the Herald again here, it's just, the Herald seems to be becoming more and more like a student union, left-wing newspaper. They're hammering on about him. You see the picture there, as though the men just get paid more than the women for doing the same job, which is absolutely untrue. But it keeps, it's keeping being pushed across businesses.
And presumably that's off in terms of like the scale there, in that it looks like men get paid double what women get paid. Is that yes. What the article actually says? Or
no, the pay gap is only about 9% or something.
Yeah,
so it's actually very small. It's probably smaller than it would naturally be because of differences in level of ambition, type of work people want, how willing people are to relocate to get promotions or whatever. So I think probably the gender pay gap in Scotland is artificially low. The thing with the gender pay gap, if you want people to get married and have kids, that tends to happen more when the man is high earning. So if you cut down the wages of men, you're going to tend to have less people getting married and less people having children. It's just the fact, it's just the way it works out. So closing the gender pay gap is a way of, it's sort of indirectly, it's a way of attacking family formation and birth rate. But you'd be a brave man to say that, or a brave woman to say that in a lot of contexts. It's been killed time and time again, but it refuses to die in the ideological echo chambers, particularly in Scotland. Okay. This was a video I put out last week. I'll just summarize it very quickly in case you haven't seen it. It did very little on YouTube, very few views on YouTube. I got a lot of views on Facebook. Facebook seems to be our goldmine at the moment, and not that many on X. But my point was basically, if you look at the behavior of the SNP, John Mason was expelled from the SNP for refusing to declare a genocide in Gaza. John Mason said he thought Israel's actions were excessive, maybe vindictive, but he didn't think the word genocide was appropriate, so they expelled him. Then at their conference, they have the Palestinian ambassador fella who absolutely, utterly refuses to condemn the October the 7th terrorism in any way, shape or form. He will not condemn it.
Yes.
And I think if you're going to go for like that, what other explanation can there be for that than anti-Semitism? So far to the extremes there. But I think that is what is going on. The Herald is no pretense of neutrality at all. And on social media, I don't know it's like they've got some student activists running their social media accounts. It's quite remarkable.
But the prestige of these papers has gone down with their circulation going down. So to some extent, you can't expect them to have, fantastic journalists because their circulation is very small. People are reading papers left and less.
But just while we're on the topic of the Herald, they put something on Facebook. It was maybe even today. What was it? It was about. It was an Asian woman, some sort of teacher trainer or something, and she was saying we need to teach all teachers about white privilege so they can teach the children of Scotland about white privilege because that's really important. And underneath it, I think it's probably not an exaggeration to say there were hundreds of comments just absolutely slating it, virtually none in support, but just screamful after screamful of comments, some of them quite unpleasant, absolutely slating this article. But the Herald must be undeterred. They must feel it's their mission to keep pushing these lines, regardless. Anyway, so that was that. And I think the next one, anyway, that's just a picture of John Swinney with the gentleman. Oh, we've got Anna Sarwar there in picture as well. That's quite interesting. John, I was thinking with John Swinney, what does he really believe? Does he really have strong feelings about the Israel-Gaza conflict? I don't think he has strong feelings about anything. I've yet to hear him speak about anything and thought to myself, that's the real John Swinney speaking from the heart. That's real. That's genuine. He's not just parroting the lines. That's really what he thinks. So, I basically don't know, but I really don't think that he is. Well, basically, I don't think John Swinney personally is anti-Semitic. I don't think he's particularly wound up by this issue, but I think he goes with the flow. He goes with the flow. Right, what do we got here? SNP support Hamas. They support a guy who refuses to condemn mass murder. Well, I reckon if you directly refuse to condemn terrorism, then that amounts to an endorsement, and you're an apologist for terrorism if you refuse to condemn it. Not if you haven't got round to saying anything about it, but if you're put on the spot and challenged about it and you will not condemn it, then you're a terror apologist. I say, and that's what the SNP are happy to have at their conference. So that's why I made my allegation. Right, the train stabbing. Have you got anything else for that issue, Phil, or should we?
No, nothing else on that one.
Okay. The train stabbing. I've got another slide for that in a minute. Because also a bit more has come out about the Southport murderer as well. His brother saying he was really basically afraid of his brother, the murderer, because he thought he could be capable of anything, could be capable of killing someone. So I think in both cases, I mean, the Southport murderer, he sounds like someone who just got obsessed with violence and massacres and sort of lost the plot. So there was some Islamic material on the scene, but I don't think that people are saying they don't really think that was the motivation. He was just one of those people who gets sucked into a sort of dark world of fantasizing about violence and mental health problems as well. And it seems like the train stabber as well from a couple of days ago. Yeah, who knows? But it seems like a similar sort of person. So I just had a quick look for a bit of information. Now let me find this. It's maybe there we are. People from many ethnic minority groups are more likely to be detained under the Mental Health Act than white British people. For example, black people were 3.5 times as likely as white people to be detained under the Act in the year to March 2023. Now, to get detained under the Mental Health Act, you've got to be pretty out of control there. So that could be people who are violent and dangerous, but a far higher rate among black people Why would that be? I mean, maybe someone was just genetic. Different races might be more susceptible to different issues. So there might be that. I mean, it might be something of living in a relatively alien culture could lead to mental health problems. Because is it racism leading to mental health problems? But 3.5 times more likely. That's a pretty stark statistic. So if you're looking at people who basically totally lose the plot and become like deranged criminals, looking at this statistic, it would seem like that might be the fruit of a far, far higher rate of very serious mental health problems. Any thoughts on that, Phil?
So I've not looked into any of those stats and things. Like, I might assume that there's some socio-economic stuff going on there in terms of that, particularly if there's people who are coming into the UK illegally and they can't make a life for themselves and they lack various things, So for the illegal immigrants, there's, people come across on boats and things like that. It's all men. So, or nearly all men. So they're not going to go through the normal things of life of having a family and these kind of things, because, they're going to find it hard to find a wife, and these kind of things, So I think some of the things of like, if you're coming into a country, you don't speak the language and you can't form relationships as easily, you're living off money from the government, those kind of things, that in those situations, I would expect greater mental health issues. I think that, that there might be some discrimination there as well and things like that. But I would be very hesitant to say it was genetic. I think you just have to look and see, in different countries what's happening, and it might be as well like the situation. I really feel like for a lot of what we're importing when we open our borders is problems from other countries. So problems where there are violent civil wars and things like that. So, and problems in cultures where there is a lot of violence and things like that, that some of these things are perhaps more normal in other countries. There's a normalization of criminality. So for my parents, they would go sailing, and they go sailing in the Med, and one of the things that everyone knows is don't go near Algeria, because if you go near Algeria, you'll have pirates coming out on boats, and it ends pretty horribly for you. Yeah. And there's a lot of criminal activity that's gone into Europe from Algeria, and from some other countries and things like that. But part of that is because there's a lot of criminality within those countries, and yeah. So I would think it highly likely that it's not genetic. I would think it would be likely to do with the circumstances people find themselves in.
My favorite immigration book that I've been talking about a little bit recently, he talks about how he thinks that criminal gun culture was imported to the UK, basically from Jamaica, where there were very high levels of gun crime. And in Britain, there was basically a sort of gentleman's agreement, if that's the right word, between criminals and the police. The criminals didn't carry guns and the police didn't carry guns.
Yeah.
And if a criminal used a gun, then the criminal community would turn on them. They'd virtually turn them in, because that's really not cricket, using a firearm in crime. But apparently, Jamaican criminal gun culture came in, and that brought it with it. It's worth remembering as well that generally immigrants to Britain, including illegal immigrants, they're generally not the poorest people from the country they've come from. They tend to be the wealthier, slightly wealthier people. They're not the really wealthy ones, because the really wealthy ones are quite happy staying where they are, living a life of luxury, and it's all great. The very poorest couldn't possibly afford to try and make the journey or pay traffickers or whatever. So it's the in-between ones who tend to try to...
If you've come from being at the top of your society to coming in at the bottom of another, then that's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
You know,
The evidence is that immigration is often okay. You earn 5 or 10 times as much money, but psychologically, emotionally, it's not that often not that positive because of all the negatives about social dislocation, as you say, feeling you're at the bottom of the heap or whatever. So immigration seems like, often immigrants, they don't want to say, "Oh, I'm really miserable. It's gone badly," because that makes you seem like a failure. So that sometimes feel under pressure to present it as a success, even though they're actually very unhappy about it. And to go back home seems like the ultimate failure. So
I mean, I've been thinking a bit about kind of revolution and things like that. Where does that stem from? And I think a lot of it stems from when you don't think you have options. And so one of the thoughts coming out of the Wesleyan revival, you had the French Revolution going on in France, and people said it would have spread to Great Britain had the Wesleyan revival not happened in the UK, because they did such a good job of looking after the poor. And so because they were looking after the poor, essentially, when people tried to say, look how downtrodden you are, the rich are oppressing you, it's actually these well-educated, Christians that are setting up all these missions to the poor, feeding them, clothing the naked, schooling them, doing all these kinds of stuff. And so people are like, no, actually, we love these people,
Yeah.
And so that revolution didn't happen then. And what I'm seeing at the moment, I think, is that revolution is stirring in the United Kingdom, and a lot of the rhetoric of revolution and those kind of things.
Yeah. Just going back to the immigration thing, I wonder about the effect of race. So let's imagine you're here, you're very unhappy, you're isolated, you can't speak the language, you can't get much of a job, you're getting by. I mean, it's all pretty grim. So frustration and anger and resentment is building up within you. Is that exacerbated by a race factor? I wonder. Can that turn into hatred of the native people who, for whatever reason?
I think kind of this sort of left wing. The thing that happens on the left is that the more that you accommodate the left, the more angry they become. And so it's sort of like I don't like spoiled child syndrome, that somebody gets used to demanding things. They get things by demanding things, and that fosters being more demanding and being more, and so, as Trump's come into power, there's probably been less trouble on the left, whereas, people are playing up to Keir Starmer. And trying to get more and more out of him. And as a Labour government comes in, that you're going to have strikes, you're going to have all sorts of acting up, because somebody's going to listen to it and somebody's going to give in to that.
Or in Scotland, you just have to threaten a strike and they cave in.
Yeah.
They'll splash the cash and then say, look what a good government we are. We averted a strike.
We just gave all the money away.
Gave all the money away.
Yeah.
Cannabis use, excellent point as well. I think the casual drug abuse, cannabis in particular, is at epidemic levels. And I think it contributes massively to the mental health problems that we hear about. You hear about all these people signing off work with mental health problems. I think a lot of it is LGBT experimentation that doesn't lead to good mental health outcomes, sexual promiscuity, and experimentation with drugs as well. I think that's a big part.
I don't know. Like, as a believer, Christian believer, what one verse stands out to me in these things, and it has nothing to do with race or any of those things. The wicked will have no peace. That as you do things that are morally wrong, it weighs on your conscience, and you don't have peace internally. You're mentally troubled by those things, and that's not whether you're black, you're white, or whatever. That your peace is related to your moral state. Is your conscience clear? Is it not clear?
Anyway, right, that's interesting. That's let's go back to where it got to. Not too far back. Phil, this is what you're going to talk about a little bit. There's just a couple of tweets that illustrate things that have been in the news this week. Persecution of Christians in Nigeria, which apparently I've heard this before as well. It's not actually that straightforward as Muslims persecuting Christians. It's according to a lot of people I've heard, speaking from Nigeria, they say it's a tribal thing. That on balance does tend to be Muslims against Christians. But it isn't entirely.
So in terms of the statistics, that from what I've heard is that basically that the line from the government in Nigeria is that this is a tribal thing, or it's about herdsmen against farmers and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been 19,000 churches that have been, pulled down, destroyed over, I think about like a 20-year or so period, which is a lot of churches. When there are like 7,000 Christians that have been killed this year, that raiding gangs come in. I think there's like 3 major groups which are doing it. Each of them is an Islamic group, and Christian people are just getting slaughtered, basically. Now, there are some Muslim people that are getting killed, but it's not the Christians that are killing the Muslims. It's there's fights between the Muslim groups, and the Muslims are killing Muslims, and you can kind of see from the statistics that there's maybe been like 4 or 5 mosques that have been attacked in this period. 19,000 churches versus 4 or 5 mosques. Mm-hmm. That tells you the direction which the violence is coming from.
Yeah.
And the population is over 50% Christian.
Yeah. I can't remember if I said this last week. Boko Haram, the extreme Muslim group, the one that kidnaps schoolgirls, etc.
Yes.
I found out what their name means. It means Western education is haram. It is prohibited. Western education is prohibited. So that's why they attack schools. And apparently they sometimes will attack Muslims as well. If the Muslims have been too liberal or reformist or westernized, then they'll go and kill some Muslims as well. But obviously their main target.
Yes, so the Muslim groups are fighting amongst themselves, and sometimes they together gang up on the Christians, and so the Christians are viewed as a common enemy, but internally they're fighting each other because they're rival gangs, as it were, but they have a common enemy.
Yeah. So what's the government doing there? Is the government impotent? Is the government too weak?
There are groups there trying to stop the violence, trying to, that they are essentially hearing of attacks which are about to happen and trying to create alarm systems in villages so that people can get out when they know a raiding party is coming or something like that. They will also inform the authorities and say, look, we've heard that this is happening. And on each occasion, the authorities don't come. They ignore that. On some occasions, it seems that weapons from kind of army bases have been used as well, in that they've been like borrowed by some of these radical groups and then given back. And so the government is standing by and letting this happen. And what I've heard is that I think in Nigeria, it used to be that often you would have a Muslim and a Christian standing on a ticket. Muslim president, Christian vice president, Muslim president, Christian vice president, or something like that. Now, the Christians withdrew from politics because there's so much corruption in politics. So there was a teaching that came into the church that says basically politics is so corrupt as Christians, we shouldn't be involved in it. We should remain holy, remain pure, all those kind of things. And that's a big reason why they found themselves where they are, is that they withdrew out of politics. And that's led to Muslim president, Muslim vice president tickets. And that's allowed there to be no representation, which has allowed the people to turn a blind eye to what's happening.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I was looking in Callum Miller's post there, saying about India as well. Christians and Muslims are mistreated in India. I think that Buddhism and Hinduism, generally in the West, tend to be seen as very benign religions.
There is militant Hinduism in India, but it's not spread right the way across India. I've been speaking to Indian people, and they've been saying, "Oh, in my region, it's fine." And so I think it's highly regional that there's violence within Hindu countries, and statistically, there's much less persecution from Hindus than Muslim nations.
But the government is Hindu nationalist, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think they were feared when they was first elected. Modi, they were saying, he's if you want to be an Indian, be a Hindu type line. That was the line of his party. So it's very much bubbling under the surface there, and it does come to the surface quite often as well. And Sudan, there's a report there. So Sudan has been ethnically cleansed before a rise. Civilians have been massacred due to their race. The horrors are unparalleled in the 21st century. Silence over these atrocities is shameful, says him. I think Sudan as well, generally it's a Muslim north and a Christian south, which I know there's a lot more to it. There's the tribal differences or whatever. Yeah. So Sudan split in two, didn't it, a few years ago? But very severe problems there. I guess one of the points to make here, that these are very serious issues, and yet they receive so little attention. There's no... I'm not saying I'm particularly paid huge attention to them, but I'm not walking along the street every Saturday waving a Palestine flag. But the disproportionate focus on Israel-Palestine is obviously due to something else other than just concern for people in a difficult situation.
So I looked up the kind of persecution index for Christians. Where are Christians most persecuted? And it came up with a ranking of 50 countries where Christians are being persecuted. And 27 of those were Muslim countries. Mm-hmm. And the top 10, is very highly dominated by countries where there's Muslim persecution of, Islamic persecution of Christians.
Yeah.
At the top is North Korea, and then you're very quickly into a list of sort of Islamic nations or places where there's Islamic persecution.
It's one of the areas where many areas, I feel we're in a debate desert. So I would think we should be hearing more of, let's say, like sort of mainstream, middle-of-the-road Muslim in Scotland being asked about these things and put on the spot and challenged or whatever. I mean, they might have very good answers to them or whatever. But that's the sort of conversation we hear, rather than the sort of Tommy Robinson on one side and the BBC on the other, and the excluded middle. You don't really hear much from the...
I think that what I want to hear is a genuine discussion of the doctrine, because people, I think, aren't treating Islam as a philosophy, basically, as a political philosophy or a political ideology, but it has very definite and unchanging statements that it makes. That you can't go back and you can't change the hadiths, you can't go back and you can't change the Quran, you can't go back and you can't change the life of Muhammad. Mm-hmm. And so there are things that Islam will kind of always be, unless it changes that fundamental thing that we accept the Quran and we accept these hadiths and things like that. And we accept that, Muhammad basically lived a good life. That you then have to define the things that Muhammad did as being good, and you then have to, seek out the things that Islam asks you to seek out. And I think that those things need to be very honestly evaluated. Labour can change their policies, different parties can change their policies and things like that. But there's a fundamental structure to the belief that can't change,
I mean, there are more liberal versions of Islam, And it could happen that what are now seen as the very liberal elements become the dominant. I would still say, even if that were to happen, there's always going to be a new generation who might come along and say, well, you're a bunch of woolly liberals. This is not what it says. This is not what Muhammad did. So I think that's always a danger.
I think in Islam, I just been reading up on things, and for Muhammad, he basically had two faces to his life. I think it was first Mecca and then Medina.
Yeah.
And so Mecca is, at the beginning, people ridicule Muhammad and they think he's, just a bit crazy because of the things that he's saying, kind of thing, and in that period, the writing is far more peaceable and conciliatory towards the people around, the Jews, the Christians, and those kind of things.
Yeah. But it's hoping to win them over, basically.
The Medina phase, which is incredibly militant. And within Islam, there's an understanding when it comes to interpretation of the Quran that later verses carry a greater weight than the earlier verses.
Yep.
So that's like a generally understood principle of interpreting the Quran.
Abrogation, I call it.
And then there's a second one, which is that the two ways of thinking apply in two different circumstances. And so you've got within Islam, Dar es Salaam, with the house of peace. And then there's two houses. The other one is the house of war. And in the house of peace is where you have Sharia law, and Muslims are essentially, as they'd see, unoppressed and those kind of things. And in that situation, your word is binding, that you have to tell the truth and those kind of things. Whereas in the house of war, your word is binding for a maximum of 10 years, and so there are different rules that apply in these two different situations. And Muslims are instructed, if possible, to live in Dar es Salaam, to live in a country, in a situation where there is Sharia law, and they're living at peace under that. And they're only meant to go to the house of war if they're going there. I think it's Dawa that they call it, which is basically evangelism to bring about the house of peace in that nation. And so there's kind of these two different contradictory systems within one. And one seems peaceful and the other is militant. And you could find verses to back up either one, but the two ways of thinking apply in two different situations.
Yeah,
and so
that's what's there in the foundational documents. A lot of Muslims are actually not too interested in any of that, and
I think it's what you see in our nations. These two things coming together. One is that I've been thinking out this kind of contradiction of terrorism and Islamophobia. So you'll see terrorist attacks that happen in the name of Islam, and that often what will be yelled is Allah Akbar, and you'll see towers falling, you'll see people stabbed, you'll see all these kind of things, and then at the same time, this call will go out against Islamophobia. Now, phobia means fear, and terrorism means to inspire terror, and so you've got one group who are saying that they're Muslims whose aim is to inspire terror, and another group who is saying, why are you afraid? You shouldn't be afraid. You're being phobic against us, kind of thing. And these two kind of contradictory things are happening, kind of coming from the same foundational documents. And I think that's really what needs to be explored and understood is what are the teachings?
But the media will never do that, and the politicians will never do it. The media don't do it. My theory is they don't do it because they've been to school. And anyone who's been to school knows that the differences between religions is they wear different outfits for their weddings.
Mm.
Some people sit cross-legged with flowers on the ground, and some people stand up wearing white. And so generations have been taught that the differences between religions are superficial, external, and decorative. And the actual core of the matter, I think a lot of people believe the core of the matter, well, it's just a lot of nonsense in any case, so it doesn't really matter. No one should actually believe that. So it's just like a cultural tribe, and that's all there is to it. But it is not at all. Anyway, right, let's move on. Phil will be speaking a bit more on this topic at our conference. In fact, let's just go to the conference while we're mentioning that. There we are. Get your tickets. Go over to our social media. You'll find the link there. Do get your tickets. No, you're too late to join us for the meal. Actually, booking's closed for that. Do share the live stream as well. Hit share. Other people will be able to join in. Right. This news is quite shocking. The headline's not entirely clear, but you read the article, you get the idea. 1/5 of all attempted murders in Scotland last year were by children. So there's a rapid growth in the number of children trying to kill people. Violent crime in general, but attempted murders. And I could say this, it sort of makes sense because the culture is that you don't try and control children. You don't try and teach them morality. You don't try and train them to behave themselves, to restrain themselves. They're just taught to express themselves and to, have temper tantrums, and they just get indulged, etc. And then this is coming through. I was coming through in attacks on teachers. It's coming through in attacks on other pupils. But 1/5 of all attempted murders by children. I find that quite shocking. Well, what would it take for people to say, well, hang on a bit, maybe we're going down the wrong line here. Maybe we need to, toughen up a bit with children, be a bit more straightforward, a bit more directive, a bit more disciplinarian or authoritarian, whatever you want to call it. Maybe that's what we need. But we're never going to get that from the blob in Scotland, in education, in the government, in the police, etc. But a shocking statistic. I think the actual number was something like 30. And I think it was 20. 30 children had been charged, or whatever the right terminology would be, for attempted murder. You are shocked by that, Phil?
Not too shocked, to be honest. I mean, this is like I've gone along to many of the protests that have been happening, both to do with racism and on the Palestine issue. Just observing what's going on, and the chants that I've heard at these places are calling out for revolution and death. In language which, when you just read between the lines of what's being said, is that the events of was it October 7th? I'm trying to get the date right. In Israel, that was fully justified. That to go into Edinburgh University and hear somebody saying, what the papers should have said on this day 2 years ago is victory to Palestine, and then all the Edinburgh University students applauding that. One of the chants that I've seen at the protest is basically, where land is occupied, resistance is justified. Where people are occupied, resistance is justified. Again, I think referencing October 7th. Then the call to intifada. The intifada was basically 1,000. Was it 100 suicide bombers killed 1,000 Jewish people? And there's this call to globalize the intifada, and this is what's being said again and again on these protests. And so and then within that there's the socialist banners which are calling for revolution. like openly, it's got revolution written there. And then you've got people which are, in Glastonbury, you had people saying death, death to the IDF. Now, again, that's a global pitch. It's saying that all the Jewish people in Israel should be wiped out because everyone has to do military service. So, and from the river to the sea, it's like, well, that's the whole of Israel. That's saying, everyone there needs to be wiped out, kind of thing. So all these things are basically euphemisms for killing a lot of people, and very enthusiastically embraced by people, as if saying this is just what we need to do.
So you think there's a wider culture of endorsing violence? Do you really think that influences children?
I don't think that's saying that that's children. I'm saying these are people who have been children, who are now at university age, and I see in them this this sort of, in their language, a willingness to kill.
Yeah, so I guess it's the grown-up version of throwing your toys out of the pram. Lack of restraint, just feeling that you can get away with being as outrageous and aggressive as you like.
It might be that at the moment, due to inhibition, that nobody is carrying out these things. Like one of the things I remember is I remember chatting to a person that was Muslim. As a Christian, we were kind of sharing our faith with each other, and he was a very nice person. Very hospitable, all of these kind of things. But as a Christian, I understood that there was no way a Muslim person can be sure of salvation, that you just have to trust in Allah's mercy, that your good deeds outweigh your bad. That's what I was expecting. And I said, because as a Christian, I believe that you can have assurance of salvation. So I raised this point. I said, look, is there any way that you can know that you'll be saved? Now I expect him to say, no, I can't know. I just have to, trust Allah. He said, only if I kill a Christian or a Jew. And he was, other than that, I would have said that he was a very, mild Muslim person. But what he seemed to be saying was that in a certain circumstance, I might be called upon to do that. And I'd have to be ready for that kind of thing. So that I didn't feel at all threatened by him, or he wasn't threatening towards me in any way that he treated me or any of those kind of things. And by the same token, for me as a Christian, in the Bible, it says, we consider ourselves as sheep to be slaughtered, and those are challenges, that are we as Christians, as a Christian, am I ready to lay my life down? And there've been people who've faced that challenge and have not been ready to do it, and I'm sure that there are Muslims that will be called on to do things and they say, no, I'm not going to do that. It doesn't sit rightly with me. I'm not going to do that, kind of thing. Yeah. But what I'm saying there is the ideology. And this is what I see being pumped into young people through far leftism, and more so through far leftism than anything else. That rhetoric of people being deserving of death, and we see that with abortion, a callousness to life. We see that with assisted dying, a callousness to life. I would say that there's a similar callousness to killing the people that need to be killed, kind of thing, from their perspective. That if this is what is needed to bring the change that we need to bring, if we can't persuade people, there comes a time where it's best to just move them out of the way, and then we get on with building a better society, kind of thing.
But two things about it. Just reminded me of last week, I put on there a little sticker, death to Airbnb. Now, so, fair enough to object to Airbnbs, too many Airbnbs in your stare or whatever, but death to Airbnb, that's like a total casting off of restraint and morality to put that sort of thing forward.
So we've devalued life. And I think that's the thing I'd say, that to children, life has been fully devalued. And then at the same time, there's this thing as your rights. Yeah.
Just going back to the other side, I mean, what sort of rhetoric do we get on the far right? Now, please, no one type in, there's no such thing as the far right. On the very extreme right, are there people who would be using similar?
I saw a very interesting video on. I saw two quite interesting videos on YouTube. One was a Muslim girl who went along to one of Tommy Robinson's rallies, and she said, "I'm going to put on my hijab, and I'm going to see what kind of abuse I get from this, pro-England, as it were, rally." And she went along, and she said, "Everyone actually just treated me really well." And so that was one thing. Then I saw another video that was sort of along the same vein. This was a black guy who put on a mask to make him look white, and then he went along to the same protest and tried to bring out as many racist comments as he could. And he did bring out quite a lot. He brought out comments of people saying, he would say, like, "How do you think we should deal with, the people arriving on boats?" And people, "Oh, we should just shoot them, on the beaches," kind of thing. And so there was rhetoric there from quite a number of people, and I think it was, the videos were genuine. I'm sure he didn't include the positive ones, just put together the negative ones. But there were lots of people there who were they'd had a lot to drink, and something of the attitude in their hearts was coming out, and it was just like slaughter them,
I've heard the same sort of thing. It's they should be shot type things, or we need to drop a nuclear bomb on them. I mean, without going into too much detail, I mean, I know a number of people who speak like that. I wouldn't be surprised if one or two of them don't end up as MSPs for reform in the Parliament after May. So I think it is on both sides, I think, and it is concerning. How long have we got? We've got 3 minutes. This is going back to kids. I mean, bonfire night warfare, I guess, is still to come in Edinburgh. I don't know if it'll be this Saturday. They've got their firework exclusion zones. I'm not sure what's going to happen there. But let me just see if we've got something for the last 2 minutes. We've talked about that one. I'll save that for another week. There's pictures from Dundee. There are actually a lot more people than that eventually. That was just as people were gathering. Got the Franciscan friars there. My friends from the Franciscan Friary. So we took our lights up. It was Spook's event, but we took our lights. A great big counter protest. Probably not as many people as were in the actual event. There was maybe about 40 people at the pro-life event. There was maybe 30. But they came banging drums. And this sort of aggressive chanting, just shouting things into a microphone for like 2 hours straight. Just like you get at like the Palestine things. I find it really, really unpleasant. I can't imagine I will ever. We do quite a few outdoor things, but I don't think I'll ever want chanting at them. I think it just becomes pretty ugly and sort of aggressive, and it seems to create an atmosphere that's absolutely the opposite of being willing to discuss something. Because like all I'm going to do is keep shouting this one phrase again and again and again and again. And we're going to make sure you can't get a word in and no one can hear you. And that's what we're going to do. Very, very unpleasant. I mean, that's as far as it went. I mean, there was nothing beyond that. But it was, a sort of aggressive, unpleasant spirit, if you like.
But on the pro-life march, pro-life just vigil, that there was, you posted a video and you said later on that somebody tried reversing a car, towards the, as maybe Mari said that somebody
that was in Edinburgh. I mean, they had an extremely angry, aggressive, violent man. I mean, it's in the hands of the police at the moment, so that will hopefully be dealt with. Yeah, one of the things was that he did do a 3-point turn in front of him, and he at one point his car was coming quite aggressively and quickly towards them. That made them think, "Hang on a minute, what's going on here?" Now, I just watched the video just a couple of nights ago as well, something that had happened in the vigil in Glasgow. Again, a sort of angry man come in and verbally abusing them, sticking his face in people's faces, shouting and swearing for, I don't know, 10 or 20 minutes at them. Then his parting shot was, I'm now going to go and get some paint to bring it back and pour over you.
Mm.
So I understand that went to the police as well. I'm not sure what happened. But the staggering thing is just the total parallel universe that exists in the Scottish Parliament and in the media of these vigils harassing and intimidating people, whereas they're actually subjected to criminal behavior on a fairly regular basis. So if only people knew what really went on. But the other thing I'd say from both these events, particularly the one in Dundee, actually, if someone was walking past and they stopped and had a look and they're trying to work out what was going on, I'd wander over and have a chat to them. I spoke to maybe about 4 young men or groups of young men, and almost all of them were, we're pro-life. Yeah, we think it's really bad. And some other people, there's a young Muslim man totally on board. A couple of people who are just like middle of the road, hadn't really thought about it much. But you have a chat, and they just feel like they're coming around to our way of thinking quite easily. It's like really pushing us an open door. So the interactions with people are very positive there. Again, as I found at the vigil as well, it really feels like an argument waiting to be won. I think there's a lot of people in the middle who are
I mean,
easy to win over.
I feel for probably pro-Palestine and far left that they're the noisiest people in the room, but it doesn't mean that most people agree with them, and the effect they're having might be quite off-putting to a lot of people. You know.
Just to finish, I was hearing someone speaking very recently, and they were talking about a Christian event, like a sort of question time thing. And someone came up to the mic, and they were absolutely ranting and raving about abortion. And the person telling the story was saying that what often happens in that situation is people assume that the angry person on the mic is a representative of the crowd. So what you've got to do is try and tailor your presentation so that you're not going to make him angry, and you're going to be able to calm him down and win him over. But actually, it's not representative of the crowd. The crowd is in the middle, waiting to be
judging
persuaded.
These two positions,
wanted to hear,
saying, who do I associate more with? Do I associate more with the angry person? Though that said, I've been in that situation on the street doing Question of the Day where an angry person has walked up, and he has actually taken the people I was in the process of persuading, just with the force of his anger, with them more. Because I was speaking gently and those kind of things, and then so just shout, can't get a word in, and yeah.
Anyway, we will leave it there. And right, thanks for watching. Thanks for your comments. I will look forward to seeing every single one of you on Saturday in Glasgow at our fantastic conference. So get your tickets, lunches included. It'd be great to see you there. Even if we just make part of the day, there's no discount, but if you just make part of the day, that would be that'd be good to see you as well. Right, thanks very much, Phil, and see you all next week, and see you on Saturday.
Have a good night.
Good night.